What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today I am talking about the latest offering from Vomitforth, Terrified of God. This also came out on October 11th, this time on Century Media Records, and this is the band's second album overall. Of course, this is a death metal band from Connecticut, a big young upstart that already got onto a major label with Century Media, so I've been hearing some good things about this band and I wanted to check them out for myself. Well, spoiler alert, this was kind of a mixed bag for my taste. So, when I was going through to kind of understand the style of death metal that Vomitforth play, they're kind of close to other modern bands like 200 Stab Wounds in particular, but also a little bit of Sanguisugabogg and maybe even bands like Wretched Inferno, where it's mostly about groove and chug. And I was going into this expecting to hear groove and chug. Well, you do get that. You start off with Victim Impactment Statement, and right off the rip, chunky riffs, chugging grooves, blast beats, some little pinch squeals or harmonics or bends in the riffs. The vocals, I gotta admit, the vocalist Kane, he's got wild gutturals, mid-range growls, and big, hardcore screams. So vocally, this was some pretty solid stuff. And then it goes into more groove, and then multiple breakdowns in a row, but it does end with some tremolo riffs. Basically, for all of these songs, I wrote down either slams or breakdowns in my note, because that's basically the whole vibe of this album, where it's just almost nothing but breakdowns and slams. But as it continues, Sacred Apple, the following track, does vary things up a little bit. It does showcase a little bit of another trope that comes up here intermittently, and that's thrash metal influences. Like, there's some thrashy riffs on top of blast beats, kind of like 200 Stab Wounds, but then it kind of goes back to the well of groove and breakdowns. Blood-Soaked Dream Death, which I do actually like that title, there's more Cannibal Corpse riffs and blasts going on. Like, they're a little bit more technical, a little more, uncomfortable sounding, but in a good way, that show up before it just goes back to that well. Negative Penance, this actually starts off with a really cool bass. Actually, this, as well as a later song, Rotting Wool, start off with, a nasty bass intro, and I do love the bass tone on here. And production-wise, it's pretty solid, nice balanced mix. Maybe just a notch polished, but that's not a big deal. But Negative Penance does incorporate a little more faster blast beats and tremolo riffs that kind of give it almost a technical vibe, but not quite technical. Excuse me. And then Blood Lead Index, or Blood Lead Index, however you want to say it. This time, the chugs that start this song off have a little bit of dissonance on top, and dissonance is not something I really would associate with this album, apart from the beginning of this track and the middle of the closing track, Salt, where there is a little bit more dissonance going on with the guitars. But in Blood Lead Index, it does get to arguably some of the most technical moments of the album, where it's almost Cryptopsy inspired. Like, the blast beats and the riff arrangements kind of feel close to classic Cryptopsy, or hell, even the last Cryptopsy album that came out around this time last year. And it does get into thrash territory, and this is actually one of the only songs where there's not a breakdown. Instead, you get a nice lumbering groove that kind of feels close to a band like Gatecreeper or Creeping Death, for example. Poison Child does get back to more thrashy blasting, very much like Cannibal Corpse. Fixation on the Narrative, we kind of get back a little bit to the cryptopsiness, with the blast being wild and more technical guitars. And it almost gets, dare I say, sludgy. There's a sludgy breakdown on here, which was unlike any other breakdown on the entire album. It was just almost crowbar, but with a little more brutality on top. Then you get into non-responsive. I do like the groove that starts this track off with tremolo riffs on top, and it does get back into more angular riffs and blast beats. The title track, pointless interlude, get that out of here. Fear of retaliation kind of goes back to the same tropes like thrashy and blasty grooves, but I do like the tremolos here because they crawl. It's almost like a spider crawling on your skin and you don't even know it because you're just numb to everything. And there's even some atonal riffs that show up here. And then Rotting Wool, like I said, starts off with a bass, but it's got a slower build as opposed to just going straight to the jugular with blasts or thrash or bass, or not bass, but like big time groove. It slows down a little bit at the start. Then there's a dramatic pause into more thrashy blasting, but with some nice chugs. There's even a double time stomp towards the end. And then the closing track, Salt, back to more technical tremolo riffs, but also some more atonal moments, and then blasty and thrashy and dissonant. And then you end with another breakdown. So basically, this album, it's like almost every single song had a breakdown. So I feel like I was just kind of torn. I was kind of tired out by all the breakdowns that popped up on here. At least with a modern band like 200 Stab Wounds, they at least know how to place them and not overdo them on every song. Like maybe one, and then it's like thrashy energy or like nasty straight up death metal. This, while it's death metal, feels a little bit more towards the hardcore side of things a little bit. And after a while, I got tired of this formula. Like, I could not get into this really at all. I like the little different variants in some of the songs, like whether they go into like straight up thrash metal or they incorporate some dissonance or atonal riffs. And actually, one of the big standout moments was the very end of Fear of Retaliation. Kind of ends with a little bit of like a dark melody. And I was like, finally, something a little bit different on this album. So yeah, you kind of get where I'm coming from. This album's just really formulaic, and I got tired of the formula about, I don't know, 3, 4 songs in. I'm just kind of like, okay, I got you, Vomit Forth. I'm not saying this is a bad album or there's like bad songs. It's just, it's very repetitive. It just stays in one gear. Granted, they do try and spice things up here and there, but even that wasn't enough to make this a more enjoyable album. So for that, I'm going to give this a 2.5. Like, it's not quite bad, but it's not quite good. It's just center of the pack. Like, there's potential here, but I hope that perhaps on their next album, whittle down the breakdowns and actually focus on more songwriting nuance. And maybe we'll see what happens. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.